Hey, it's me, Tim. Today I am going to wire up this guitar I've been working on. I've had a lot of viewers request more information about how to do guitar wiring, and so this is a video for them. I'm going to say right now that I am not an expert at this. I've never taken any classes or lessons or anything, so there's definitely much more in-depth and better information out there that you can find, and I might even use words wrong. I apologize if I do, but I'm going to show you how I wire guitars together, and it's been working for me for years, and it's not that complicated. So this is sort of like, I guess, the 101 class. Check it out. First thing we're going to need is a guitar. And then we're going to need some tools. This guitar is a really handy one for me to show you because I'm wiring it onto this pickup. The basic idea is that you have this electromagnetic pickup right here that's going to pick up the string vibrations, and you're going to send that information into an amplifier through this wiring. There's this guitar jack plugs in here. There's a knob that's going to control the volume of it, and there's a knob that's going to control the tone of it. Actually, that's the volume, that's the tone. I'm going to mark that right now because when you're upside down, you start seeing things differently. So, I'm just going to put a little V and a little T just to help me not get confused in the future while I'm working on this, because stuff happens. I've already started setting this up. You see I have the pickup is already in place and I have the wires here. Now this is a humbucker pickup, which means that there's two sets of electromagnets in here that work off each other. There are also pickups that are called single coil, where there's just one of these, and they would have fewer wires to deal with. You can do all sorts of fancy stuff because they wire these separately, and you could actually like send them to different switches, so you could turn one on, turn one off, flip one backwards, all these fancy things. I'm not doing any of that today, so I've taken the red wire and the white wire and I have just put them together, so now it's made this one circuit instead of two. And this is a used Seymour Duncan pickup that I'm using right now. And so then that leaves me with a couple more wires. I have my green wire, which is like my live wire, and I have my black wire, which is like my ground wire, and then there's also a grounding wire that's in here that I've already attached. These are a little short for me, so I'm actually going to make them longer and just like weld on, or solder I should say, on little extensions to these so I can very easily wire this pick guard for you guys to see while I'm doing it. Then there's another wire that's going to be important, is underneath here is where the guitar bridge is going to go, and I want to have a ground wire running up through here to here connecting the bridge, because the bridge touches the strings touch your hand. All this stuff is going to really help eliminate any buzzes. And then the other thing that you always want to do to eliminate some noise and to get a better setup is you want to use what's called shielding tape or shielding paint, and it's a conductive paint that you can put inside your guitar. And there's a couple ways to do this. You can buy this paint and you would like paint this whole area that all the electronics are going to go into, and it's going to help shield it from interference and radio waves and stuff like that. The other thing you can do is use shielding tape, which is copper, and this is what it looks like. It's a tape. You peel the back off and it sticks on, and this is what I usually use, but you don't have to buy the shielding tape from the guitar parts stores. You can buy what's called slug tape at your local box store or hardware store, and they use this for, I guess, keeping slugs out of the garden, and it's the same exact stuff. You get a lot more of it for like a lot less money. So buy slug tape instead of shielding tape. And the other thing you can do is you can use aluminum foil, which some people say copper works better. I think copper probably helps a little more, but I'm also like a cheapskate guy, so I would be the kind of guy to use aluminum foil and be fine with that as well when I run out of bug tape. Now, this particular pickguard I'm making happens to be made out of aluminum, some aluminum signage that I had reclaimed. So I'm not doing any of that on this because the whole thing is already shielded because it's made of aluminum, so it should be fine. But if I plug it in and I find it's noisy, I can always go and take it, undo these, put some shielding tape down and put it back together. It's not a big deal. So that's the basic principles here. Then the other thing to talk about, I guess, is these pots or potentiometers. Here's one you can see. These are rheostats, just like you would have on your dimmable light switch, but they do different things. They're for low volt, obviously, and they come in different capacities: 500K, 1 meg, 250K. Typically speaking, guitars with humbuckers, like this guitar, you would use a 500K pot, And guitars with single coil and basses, you would use a 250K pot. That's because the lower the number, the warmer the tone of the pot. And then with a humbucker, though, you want to go up to this higher number because you want to brighten it up a little bit, because these are a little bit darker than the single coils are. And that's probably why I like humbuckers. So I have a couple 500K pots already in here. And there's a lot more to that. There's people that mess around 300Ks and one. There's all these different things you can do, with those. But this is just, like I said, the basics. So I have a couple 500K pots in here, which I'm going to use. Now, outside of that, all that's really left to do is to wire it up and solder it. Soldering is basically like welding. You need a soldering iron, which I have here, and I have this sort of kind of cool stand that mine goes in. There's supposed to be a little sponge there with water to help clean it, keep it clean in the bottom, but I've since lost that. I don't know. And that's obviously a pretty important tool. And you will also need, some wire strippers. You'll need. I always find myself needing a pair of needle nose. I find myself using these a lot. Because I forgot to grab my. I forgot the other thing you're going to need are for your electronics is a capacitor. So what you're doing when you use the knob, the pot, the potentiometer that affects the tone, is you are blending the signal through a capacitor, which will affect the amount of frequency that you allow to pass. So you're going to need one of these as well, and they make those in different things, and you can look up what numbers you think are going to work best for you, etc. This is a handy little tool that I use when I'm soldering. It's a heat shield, and you don't want to fry your capacitor before you get it in there, so if you kind of snip that while you're soldering, that sort of helps to protect it. What else do we need? I have this little pokery thing that comes in handy a lot, because when you're soldering stuff, you're heating it up with a soldering iron, and then you need to pull the soldering iron away and let the solder cool before it, otherwise it'll move while it's still hot because it's not actually adhered. So this is kind of comes in handy for holding stuff in place. And that's pretty much it. You're also going to need some wire, and there's all sorts of different color wires. Red usually means hot, and black is ground, and all this stuff. All my wire is reclaimed. I just have this big collection of wire that I've reclaimed from pinball machines over the years. So it's all these different funky colors, and all I do is find basically 2 colors, 3 if I'm doing a more complicated wiring or whatever, to use in the build. And so in this case, I'm going to use this green and white for live, and I'm going to use the darker one. I always use the darker colored one for a ground. I have brown and blue, so I use brown because it almost looks like black. I like to get a bunch of pieces of wire prepped together before I go. So strip the end a little bit. I need some wire to go from my pickup to extend it, so I'm going to clip a pretty long one. I'm going to make all these pretty long because we have the room today and we're trying to show it off. So here's a nice long one. I have a bunch of pieces of wire prepped. I'm going to run my ground wire that's going to my bridge through here. I have this hole that I drilled out earlier. And what I like to do, I'm just going to go this way, this has got a nicer side, a little more wire stripped. What I like to do is just take a little dab of hot glue to just make sure that this stays in place while I'm working. This is a real quick and crude drawing of the basic wiring for a single pickup. You don't have to put this to memory, because if you just Google that search, you will find, very easy to follow and see diagrams of how this is done. But basically, you have the 2 wires that we're going to use coming off the pickup. The ground wire is going to connect to everything else. Everything has to be grounded together. So we need a ground from where the jack goes. That's going to connect to the tone. That's going to connect to the volume. That's going to connect to the pickup. That's going to connect to the bridge. That all has to touch. And the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to put our capacitor on the middle pot, or the middle knob of the pot. There's 3 tabs to solder to, and the capacitor is going to get grounded to the system. And the volume has 3 tabs, and this tab here all the way on the left, I guess you would say, is going to get grounded. And then other than that, we just have our live wire. It comes from the pickup to the volume, and it goes to the tone, and it also goes to the jack. That's really it. So now we're going to solder it. I've got my soldering iron heated up, and I have some flux here to help keep my solder joints clean. What you're supposed to do is brush a little bit on before you solder. What I tend to do is dip my tip into it to clean the tip and then put it on there, and then tip it in again when I'm done, which is probably not the right way. And I'm sure there's a million reasons why and a million reasons people will tell me, but it's been working for me. I have my wire prepped. I have my solder. I am using Kessler solder 0.031 inch 6040 rosin core. Contains lead, so something to be aware of. I have used just plumbing solder that you can get at the local box store in the past, and it does work fine. This works a little bit better. It was one of my viewers that actually hipped me to it, so thank you very much. I'm sorry I forget who it was right now. And that's about it. I got all my tools. I got my soldering iron, my little poker prodder thing. So the first thing I'm going to do is what's called tinning the tabs. So you can see how there's these little holes? That's where you're going to put your wires to connect them. Some bigger ones there. I'm going to actually heat those up and sort of get a little dab of solder in the hole before I do anything. And then what I can do when I go to do the wiring is I just heat up that solder that's there to stick the wire in, and it's going to kind of help it. Otherwise, I'm starting from scratch, trying to hold the wire and hold the soldering iron and hold the things together. This just gives you a heads up. But before I do that, I'm going to quickly, because I do forget this a lot, I'm going to take a little piece of sandpaper and I'm going to rough up the tops of these pots so I can easily solder on them. For my grounds. Okay, I have my pots roughed up. Do my little preheat thing. So you're supposed to try and not touch the soldering iron to the solder, but I end up touching the two together all the time. So I just sort of heat it up a little bit, and that's why my soldering iron looks like garbage. And you see how I have that little spot now covered with solder. Of course, that one I just did, I don't need to do because that's going to get stuck to the top here, but I'm going to let that sit for a minute. Now I'm going to extend my pickup wires here to make life easier. These little bits when I trim them. I'm going to use my green and white for my lead, so I'm going to attach that to this green wire here. And what I'm going to do is twist them together. And then I'm going to get a little bit of solder on them to make sure that they don't come apart, like a little glue. And now I want to make sure they don't ground out by accident, so I'm going to put a little bit of electrical tape around them so if they touch anything else, they are protected. We could actually probably do a common ground right here, and we can merge these two, the ground we have coming from the bridge and the ground we have coming from the pickup, put those together, and then we'll do a common ground here. And this guitar is a little different than the way I usually do them with this pick guard thing, which is why I chose this one for the video, but it gives me the opportunity to make it easier to work on this in the future and really extend these wires out. And let's do our lead circuit first. So this wire has to go to this first tab on the volume. You have to be a little bit ambidextrous with this, and there are all sorts of little extra hand type tools they make and stuff, but I found that I can usually just do it. Oops. We're going to need to get another wire in here, so I just want to get this to sit like that for a second. There we go. Fell right into place, actually. Now here's where that little tool I was talking about that holds stuff in place comes in handy. I'm going to dump a big wad of solder, but if I move my soldering iron right now, it's all going to come apart because it's still hot. So now I can hold it in place with that tool, let it cool off for about 10 seconds. And now we are joined together. we go. Now we run this from our middle post to the live part of our jack here. Nice. Next up we'll do the capacitor, and that'll start our grounding. So let me see. I'm going to use these needle nose to pull this tab out. And while I have the needle nose in my hand, I'm going to grab this one here, which is going to get grounded to this later. So I just bent it over and we'll touch it right there, and then later I'm going to solder that on. In the meantime, I'll put my little heat shield on this capacitor. Give that a little bend. And then we're going to stick that right into the center tab. A little solder there, let it cool. And I always try to do this one as quick as possible because I do get concerned about heating up that capacitor and really screwing it up. And so I should talk about the way I pronounce solder. It is spelled S-O-L-D-E-R, so it is probably supposed to be pronounced solder, but I grew up in New England and learned to speak in Massachusetts where it is pronounced solder. And so I apologize if I'm saying it wrong. I'm not really sure the correct way to say it. I think it depends on where you live. Okay, great, that's done. Now all I have to do is all of my ground connections, which are half done already because I have my pickup and my bridge already grounded to this wire, which I can now just hold down right here. Put a pretty liberal amount of solder. Hold it in place with that. Count to 5. Perfect. And then I need to connect this one to this one because they all have to connect. Let me try and get a tight shot. Okay, and now we have our pickup lead going to the first tab on the volume knob, which then goes to the first tab on the tone knob. We have our pickup lead then coming from the second tab over to the jack, and we have the capacitor going from the second knob to the ground of the tab. Oh, I need to solder this real quick, I forgot. I want to make sure my ground here stays good because I want to ground my third tab into the ground system. And I have everything grounded from my pickup to my bridge to my jack to all my pots. They're all grounded. So now, before we turn everything off, we're going to plug it in and tap on the pickup and see if it works. Now there's no strings on this guitar yet, but I do not need strings to see if I did this right. I have my shop amplifier plugged in, and I have this 1/4-inch jack going to the shop amplifier, so I plug it in. And I hear already, I can hear sound. So I hear that works. So this is my volume knob. So that works, and then this is my tone knob. I hear the difference. Here's the bassy side and the treble side. So I know we're good. This guitar is very live because it's hollow. It's interesting. Hopefully it'll sound all right. We're going to string it up and find out next. there you have it. A quick and dirty tutorial on how to wire an electric guitar, showing the very basics for very basic people like me. Like I said, there's a lot more that can be done with this. There's all sorts of variations you can get into putting in, effects and all these like crazy things. And there's a ton of resources for that on the internet. I would recommend, if you're interested in it, to go check it out. This is, like I said, just a tutorial, just a basic starter for some of my viewers. So check that out. I'm excited to get this guitar strung up and see what it sounds like. So now I'm going to do that. Thank you all very much for watching, and be good. As always, please like, share, and subscribe. And you can also support me on Patreon at patreon.com/TimSway, where you will get early access to content, as well as some bonus content, as well as sometimes I just give stuff away because it's fun. All right, thanks, and be good.